tune, do we? Cool.
All right, you want to have a seat there and we'll chat?
Yeah, so I'll start here, right? And then if
Yeah,
I
you can go back and forth as you wish.
Yeah. Okay, chat right.
Pushkin.
So, Jacob, welcome back to Broken Record.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. And we are talking about your new album, The Light for Days.
Yes.
So tell me about making this.
This album.
Yes.
So I've spent the majority of the last 7 years making these 4 radically collaborative albums called Djesse. Djesse Volume 1, 2, 3, 4. And these were very, very broad creatively, very sort of extortionate, you could say, very, very varied, very diverse, very multiple layered, sort of kaleidoscopic albums. And I knew that after finishing them, I'd want to try something different. I didn't have any firm ideas, but I knew in the back of my head I had this thought that it'd be fun to embrace the idea of making a record with just one instrument, to sort of limit the palette. And what I ended up with this record was a 4-day window before my tour began in May. I was going to go to Asia to play some shows there. And I thought, well, what if I make the whole album in 4 days? So it was these 2 limitations. It was 4-day window and a 5-string guitar. And that's how this album came to be.
And it is very sparse sounding for people who know your music. How many tracks would you use on a typical song on this album compared to some of the songs you did on Djesse?
Well, everything from 2 to 50, probably, on this album. On Djesse, it's, there was easily in the hundreds for every song. Mm-hmm. There'd be moments where I'd have, audience members from around the world involved, which is many, many hundreds of microphones on top of orchestras that I recorded or choirs I recorded and multiple instruments, multiple vocal parts. This album it's just a different style of infinity. I'm a firm believer that you can render infinity out of anything. You can render it out of infinity itself, but you can also render it out of much more finite terms. So, yeah, with this album, I enjoyed both the limited scale of the palette, but also the time frame. I think it helped me make decisions because there's an unlimited amount of things possible at all times, something I've come to experience. Mm-hmm. So I think with this album, it was fun to really enjoy kind of that tight window for making decisions. I also think it was fun to really kind of extrapolate on all the tonalities possible with this 5-string guitar, because it's not just like a singer-songwriter folk record. There's also voices and other layered guitars and sort of these colourful worlds. But I feel like there's something that this guitar gives as a spirit that just provides a sort of context for the storytelling in a way that was quite satisfying in the end.
You've talked in the past about how you call it the decoration, or the edge of songs, the multiple tracks, the vocal things you add, the altered chords. You think of those almost immediately when you're thinking of a song you're covering. In this case, you really restricted that in a way. A lot of these songs, and you do some beautiful covers, Close Your Eyes and Beach Boys song and Norwegian Wood, there's not that much reharmonization, which of course is one of your signature moves. Mm-hmm. Did you go in thinking that way, or did the guitar just lend itself to a maybe more straight-ahead approach?
I think I found myself wanting to just do justice to these songs in their own right. There are a couple of expensive moments, for sure, but I would say much fewer than I am used to. I think the thing with this record, more than anything harmonic, that inspired me was it's a world. It's a very particular world of the sound of the instrument, the way in which the guitar lends itself to. I think it's just it's a different kind of decoration. Like with one of the things with this album I really enjoyed to do was this thing where you have essentially a live take of a song. So I stood and I performed like an entirety of a song, vocal and guitar takes. This is how normal people record albums. It's quite novel for me. I usually record all the elements separately and collide them later. But with that full take, I think there was an amount that was the unification for the ideas. And the decoration I think I added later was sometimes it was sonically interesting, but I think it was less sort of like harmonically driven. And I think in a way that's always been in my work and always been in the music, but I think I've put more emphasis on some of the harmonic irresponsibilities, you could say, of the past than I did on this particular album.
You've talked a lot about the harmony and the sounds on this guitar. You should tell us about your guitar. Many people know you play a 5-string guitar, but
Yes.
tell us how it's tuned, how you see it.
So this is it's a fun story. I grew up playing a 4-string guitar when I was just a wee lad, called a tenor guitar, and they're rife in sort of folk music, especially in England. And I never really got on too well with the 6-string guitar. Like as a kid, it wasn't something that appealed to me greatly. It wasn't something that threw itself into my imagination and provided things. I think one of the reasons was because the foundations of the guitar are based in shapes that when you play them, they sound familiar. And I think as a child, I was always excited by things that sounded unfamiliar. And when I first heard the tenor guitar, it felt both like something I knew, but it also felt new and strange and unfamiliar in a particular way. So the tenor guitar, I can show you, the tenor guitar, as being a 4-string guitar, was tuned like this, which is the same as like a violin or a I suppose it's similar intervallic system to a cello, same as a mandolin, things like this. So fifths-based tunings. What I tended to do as a child was to tune the top string down a tone to there. So that was my guitar. That was the sound of the guitar for me for so many years. And
so you had a fifth, and then
I had a fifth, and a fourth.
And a fourth.
And crucially, I had this octave here. So I got used to that idea that you could find the sort of the parallel octave and use it. So developed a bunch of shapes for this tuning. And the more I played it, the more I realized, it'd be really cool to have a 5th string. Because if I had a 5th string, it would actually make the whole tune symmetrical. Because then you could have, and at the very top, which means you have 2 octaves. You have this one, they're the same note, and then those are the same note. And the shapes that I'd figured out for the original 4-string would still work, like the major shape and all those sort of things. But you'd have the ability to access the shape from one direction, like that, and also from the bottom. So every shape is totally symmetrical. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can really find yourself with interesting kind of like, there's an interesting openness to the fifths of the tuning, but the fourths of the tuning, given now that it's 2 fifths.
So just to be clear, it's the strings are now, the bass string is a...
So I knocked the tune down to a D. So this is D, A, E, A, D. So it's like the E is like a mirror right. Image.
But they're fourths on the top.
The fourths are on the top, the fifths are on the bottom.
So it's on the bottoms, it's like could be like a string bass.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fourths on the top mean you can play Chuck Berry.
Exactly, absolutely.
And be your own bass player.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are sort of two main vocabularies, one being a fifths thing. So, mandolin players, violin players, these shapes are familiar and it's easy to navigate in that way. The fourth stuff is more like, comes more from the sort of like blues and R&B world of the guitar. And just having, these closer shapes makes a lot of sense. I think as a piano player, when I sit down at the piano and play, because that's really sort of where I foundationally lived as a child, mostly in terms of an instrument, my left hand would often play wider intervals than my right hand, because the piano just sounds better like that. If you play really clustery sounds in the left hand, it gets muddy. But the right hand, you could be kind of as expensive as you want, right? So I think the way the voicings were positioned and the way that the shapes I loved worked were that you'd have wider intervals at the bottom and smaller intervals at the top. So I think that my access point to guitar, which is less of thinking of myself as a guitar player and more of thinking of myself as just someone who loves music and knows the things that I know and loves the things that I love, I think I was naturally drawn to this sense that you'd have a slightly narrower space at the top of a chord than at the bottom. It's kind of mirroring the harmonic series, you could say, the overtone series in nature. The bigger intervals are lower down. And for whatever reason, it really tickled my brain. And, I don't really play the guitar like guitar players necessarily do. I have a sort of quite strange and fairly unconventional technique, but one of the things I like to do is I like to sort of play with my left hand. That's entirely my left hand. If I play one note with my right hand, all of that vocabulary comes from one hand, and I think that to me feels like something that it feels piano adjacent in the sense of playing a key on the piano rather than plucking with one hand and playing with another. And so I don't necessarily think of
what we call pull-offs,
hammer-ons,
all that vocabulary.
All of that vocabulary.
You love that.
I love that, and I never really got into guitar through the lens of like being someone who's picking, like, and I think that stuff's amazing. But for me, I love playing melodies kind of essentially with both hands, like I would on a piano. So I'm sort of approaching the guitar a bit like a piano player, and I'm super grateful to Andy Powers, who's actually the master builder for Taylor guitars, who's also a good friend of mine. He's the first person who I mentioned the idea to, who said, "Hey, I think I can build you this guitar that's in your weird brain." Because for many years I've been playing it in my imagination alone. I'd figured out the shapes for a guitar that didn't yet exist, but I knew that they would work if only I could play the guitar. And then Andy said, "I can build it for you." And this is the exact one that he built. This is the first one that he built.
And you didn't try on a 6-string like open tunings, for example?
Oh, I totally did. So my first kind of my first access point to kind of playing the guitar at all before this guitar was created, besides the tenor guitar, was literally to rip a string off my 6-string guitar. I would remove the top string, and then I'd tune the top 2 strings of those 5 to the same note, and it would be like a tenor guitar. And that was interesting and strange. But I think that I loved the resonance of the guitar so much. I loved the sort of spirit of it, the vocabulary of it so much. And then eventually I sort of manifested this beast here.
One of the songs you cover on this album is Fairy Tale Lullaby by John Martin. Who people might be familiar with, may not be. But to me, a lot of this album reminds me of that era of British folk. John Martin, Nick Drake, Richard Thompson, who's a huge favorite, and he's been on the show. Were you conscious at all of those sounds when you were playing?
Totally. I used to absolutely crush on that album, London Conversation by John Martin, which is just him and a guitar. And he has a really interesting approach to it. He plays it, with a lot of these sort of hammer-ons, and it's quite groovy, and it's less kind of like strummy and more kind of a combination of finger-picking and rhythm and time and little licks and things here and there. So that was a lot of my reference for the album. And Joni was another huge inspiration for me. And just the way that she heard solutions through the open tuning systems and made it possible for all of us as musicians to hear the guitar in a sort of new light. But
and then you played with her a year or two ago.
I did.
Right?
I did.
What was that like to meet
Joni
Mitchell? It was
pretty extraordinary. Some people are such giants that you almost don't consider that they're real people. And Joni was someone who, I knew that she was having a hard time with her health a few years ago, and I think in my mind, put her in this category of just sort of like absolute Titanic legend who I will never even meet or encounter. And I was so overwhelmed to get to hang with her and play with her. She'd been hosting these Joni jams, is what she called them. People come around the house playing Joni tunes, other tunes, and just having fun. And so I became a part of that scene a few years ago, back in sort of 21, 22. And then she invited me to accompany her at the Grammys. I think it was last year, playing Both Sides Now, which was really a life highlight for me. And then I joined her at the Hollywood Bowl for those 2 iconic nights there, which I think were the last 2 gigs that she played with her sort of all-star band with Blake Mills and Robin Pecknold and all sorts of luminary people. Lucius were there, and God, it was wonderful. So getting to absorb a bit of her attitude was really, really interesting. And of course, she's really punk, and she's such a jazzer. Like she phrases like Wayne Shorter does, and it's no wonder that they were friends, because the way that Wayne had this sense of being so unlocked, so totally anything is possible, with the sort of inner logic of a child, and a total connection between intuition and craft. And I think Joni obviously came up in that same era, same as John Martin and the rest of them in the sort of late 60s as a folk sort of songstress. I think her real calling was, I would say, was to be a jazz musician. And it was really, really exciting to get to provoke her, I would say, musically, and see her respond, because every time she'd sing a song in rehearsal, it's come out totally different, which is very much like my wheelhouse. So it was fun to get to adapt my language around her creative decisions and watch her sparkle and just sort of get her to react in different ways through things I would say and do. It was a really, really profound experience for me.
I heard a lot of Joni Mitchell, early Joni Mitchell, in, I think, a beautiful song on your album, I Know a Little.
Oh,
and I don't know if that was directly inspired or it has that flavor to me.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you to say. Unavoidably, I was inspired by Joni at every turn with this record. That's one of those songs that's very much built out of this figure. It's just a very simple figure that kind of goes round and round. You've got chord 1 and chord 4 mostly. Can you imagine me, Jacob Collier, saying that I wrote a song with those two chords? But Joni also had this way of writing songs with 1 or 2 chords, but then there'd be these moments of color, these beautiful kind of explosions of sound. And in the bridge of that song, I throw a couple of other more chromatic moments in. And I think Joni made that possible for all of us. I think it was her kind of tenacity and taste that provided a sense that as a musician or as a songwriter, as a guitar player, you can totally go into that zone without losing the grounding of your song and without it becoming too cerebral.
Mm-hmm. Can you show me that transition?
Yes, I absolutely can. So if I tune, there's sort of 2 tunings for this guitar. One being this, the other being this, where you put a 5th at the top instead of a 4th, which kind of puts you in this key. So this song goes like this. I remember the feeling, I remember the taste of you. The little shadows cover the ceiling. Suddenly I believed in you. Little, I remember the worship, watching all of my walls come down. A little more, letting it all fall down, letting it go. I know, I know, I know, I know, I know, I know. A little. So that figure for the verse is really simple, right? And then to chord 4 and back to chord 1. So that's all well and good. And then this kind of bridge moment. This note there, just a moment of color, a moment of chromaticism, which just kind of takes you out of the reverie for a second, but in a sort of non-disruptive way. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of wakes up your ear and reminds you of the other possibilities that are close at hand around the key. But I think that the melody of the song, another lesson I think I learned from Joni and others, is that the melody of the song grounds you in the key. The melody doesn't kind of pander to the chromaticism. The melody just stays right where it is. It goes. So the melody is at home in the original key, but the chords beneath are giving you that context, the spiciness that sort of provides that stuff. So, I think of Joni and all those moments where she would just throw something in that was just slightly odd or something unconventional and provide that sense of spark.
Now, one difference between you and Joni Mitchell is that she didn't often know what notes she was playing. She would devise these tunings and just play them. You, of course, are maybe the world's most famous music theory nerd.
Maybe so.
When you are playing, do you know every note you're playing? Or
sure.
Do you ever have, because so much of guitar playing, for example, you covered a James Taylor song. James Taylor has a couple of moves, the suspended 2 up to the 3.
I love it.
It's almost all, it's a song that almost comes out of physically playing the guitar.
Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't even have to know the theory just to know that.
Yeah.
Are you always conscious of the theory when you're playing, or sometimes does your hand just go somewhere and then maybe you figure it out later?
Oh, totally. I think that those are some of the most interesting moments when your hand finds the solution. I would say, despite my kind of love of musical theory, the kind of science behind what makes it work, I never create in a theoretical way. I'm never sitting there thinking, right, well, since I'm in the key of B flat, I think that the note G sharp would be appropriate because of the relationship. I'm never thinking like that. What I know, I think maybe similar to other guitar players, is I know the shapes I like, but my shapes often come from instruments that aren't the guitar. So I think that, a move like this is something I know about emotionally. Like, I understand the effect that chromaticism is going to have on the harmony, but I'm not thinking of it. I could, if I wanted to, define it as, right, that's a sharp 5 move going to the thing, or it's modulation to the 6. But it doesn't help me as a songwriter to do so. Most of the time, I think having the command over that language helps when you're communicating to other musicians what you want. So if I'm arranging for orchestra, for example, or I'm writing something for my band to play, or a group of singers to sing, and I'm able to write out the notes that I'm hearing and kind of define to them why certain notes in certain chords kind of make you feel a particular thing, that's helpful for me as a band leader and as an arranger and as a producer. But I think as a songwriter, I'm not speaking in my own mind using that language unless I need to for any particular reason. In the same way that when I'm speaking right now, I'm not thinking, oh, there goes the verb, and oh, that's the adjective, and oh, let's make sure the noun is at the end of the, But I've absorbed these kind of rules from having spoken a lot as a child and being surrounded by masters of speech as a child, like the same as you. So I think with music, it's the same with me. I can put that hat on if I need to, but overarchingly, I mostly am moving just through kind of association and feeling and thinking, oh, I do like that as a sense. And I spent a lot of my teenage years trying to find chords that I had no idea what they were because they excited me so much. And but then once those chords become part of your repertoire, then your kind of repertoire grows. But I would still call it a non-theoretical songwriting experience.
Mm-hmm. You throw in a couple chords in the James Taylor piece I mentioned. There's and I tried to pick it out and I couldn't.
That E flat major.
Is it an E flat major?
I think I know the moment that you.
So is it a? I'm going to get this wrong. Was it a tritone at that point, or
it's half of a tritone, which is a minor third, but it has a similar sort of sense about it. It's like one of my favorite things to do, besides tune my own guitar, is to do what we call pivoting. Mm-hmm. And pivoting is not really a musical thing. It's like it's a human thing. We understand the feeling of putting your weight or your gravity on a particular point and moving your weight from one place to another. So if I'm standing in one place and I stand on one foot and I pivot from that foot to stand in another place, then I've kind of guided my body through that experience in a controlled way. So with James Taylor, this song really is one of the greatest songs of all time. The sun is slowly sinking down, and the moon is slowly rising, and this old world is slowly spinning around, and I still love you. And I think what I did was something like, so close your eyes. You can close your eyes, it's alright. I don't know love songs, I can't sing the blues anymore. I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone. That was the moment where I went somewhere else. But that note works in this chord, but it also works in this chord as well, right? So that's been my pivot. You can sing this song. I could go when I'm gone, or I could go when I'm gone, and then I go back to, but I can sing this song. So it's just a little like a window of color opens. It's like, oh, a new world just for a moment. And,
it's such a nice moment because it follows what makes that song distinct in the harmony, which is when it goes to the flat seventh.
Yes, which is such a James Taylor move.
Right, but it's
Yeah.
so beautiful in that song, and then this just took it off, and I think you do it before the solo, and it
Absolutely right.
it just goes into space.
You're right
at
on.
that point.
The thing I love about James Taylor is he has this way of he'll often kind of reassert his position in a key using what we call as musicians a plagal cadence. So it's like that's what he'll do. It's like saying, okay, I'm in F, and then I'm going to go, which kind of means it's like B flat F. It means like I'm really home. And he does a thing called a plagal on plagal cadence, where he'll be in one key, and then he'll go into another key, and then he'll do a plagal cadence in that key, and it's a really comforting kind of harmonic instinct that he has, and I really enjoy it. But what plagal cadences do is they move you into the darker side of a key. It moves you into the flat side of a key, because you're kind of going into the dark side and onto the flat side, as opposed to right. That would be like the brighter side. You can go bright forever in that direction around what we call the circle of fifths, or you can go darker and darker, and it gets like into the deepness of the key. So one of the reasons why you can sing this song when I'm gone is surprising is because that is a really bright chord in comparison to F anyway, but especially given the context of all the plagal cadences, which is like darkening, it's like even more of a statement to say, oh, I'm going to go here, and suddenly we're in this other key. I think I'm playing this now in F. On the album, I think it's in F sharp, but in this context, it's a D major, which is like full of light, in comparison to the F. But then some of these other James Taylor-y areas are much darker, and again, I can describe these things in theoretical terms, but foundationally, these are just like sensations that are familiar to me, and I think probably to many of you too who are listening and who love listening to music, is that you're affected by the harmonic relationships. My kind of fascination and job as a musician and an arranger and harmonist is to try and understand the impact that some of these things can have on my songs and my choices, so that I can control those moments of contrast, or okay, a little bit of sunlight here, or let's make some fog, or let's make this feel heavy, or make this feel light, and I love playing with all those sensations.
It's funny you describe it as going a little dark with the plagal cadence, because when I hear it, even in James Taylor, to me it sounds like that's a gospel move.
Yeah, it is very much a gospel move.
Always going, if you think of the beginning of Aretha Franklin's "You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman." That's how the piano starts.
Plagal. Yeah, totally.
There's also, I found, and I'm not sure if this was deliberate or if this again comes out of playing on a guitar, a lot of drone sounds in this.
Yeah.
On this, it's something you don't do as much on the piano.
It's true. I think the guitar has that beautiful way of offering, like if you leave two strings going throughout your song, which I tend to do, I tend to play mostly on this guitar using the lower three strings, and these kind of just go, these are staying, they're there. So there's an automatic sense that there's a drone, which I've always loved drones so much. On the piano, it's harder to have these things ringing effortlessly out. You'd have to play those notes again and again on a piano in order to get that same effect. But I think that the drone sense kind of grounds the sound of the guitar, and being quite similar to an open tuning guitar anyway, and really being an open tuning guitar, many people who play it with open tunings I think also feel drones are of significance. I think Joni would be one, that just having those certain notes that could keep going through the chords and other notes that change is a really beautiful way of making harmonic contrast interesting.
So we know it changed your writing style. Did it change your singing?
Yeah, I would say the thing that foundationally affected my style of singing with this album more than anything else, besides just the fact that there was a guitar, was actually the style of recording with these full takes. Because I think that if I record my voice as many of us do in isolation, you sort of go into the quote unquote vocal booth, having recorded the basis of your song, and you do a performance of the song. You're not necessarily at one with any of the elements in terms of a performance like aspect. You're reacting, and so you're attached in that way. But you're not. There's not that sense of dualism. So here, if I sing and play the guitar at the same time, because I'm one person, my phrasing will move along with my instrument. My dynamics will be in line with my instrument. I will naturally kind of create a sense of conversation. You know, sun is slowly sinking down, moon is slowly rising. What happens is between my vocal phrases, the guitar will kind of rise up like a wave, and then it will rescind a little bit when I sing, and then it will fill up the gap. So the dynamics, I think, of my singing were really inspired by and informed by the way I play the guitar, and vice versa. I think the guitar was inspired by the voice as well. I think in general, as a multi-instrumentalist and enthusiast of instruments in general, I think that instruments are at their best when they feel like voices in general. You know, it's no wonder that we bend our strings, or we add vibrato on violins, or you know, across the gamut. There's the sense that instruments have a variety of ways of imitating the voice, essentially. And yeah, I think as a guitar player, I kind of try and play like I'm singing, even if I'm playing a chord. You can kind of stroke a chord, or you can. It's like you breathe. You know, it's like the way that the voice does. I think that the least interesting kind of guitar players I know play the guitar like it's a guitar, if that makes sense.
You're bringing up an interesting idea, which is modern recording now is you record everything separately. And even folk artists now, I'm sure, do their guitars separately.
Yeah, isolation.
But then you lose some of that interplay between the instruments. Now, the other thing that's happened to recording is everything is now on a grid. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about the swells, you're also changing the tempo, which is something you don't hear a lot in modern music.
It's true, you know. It's such a good point you make. I take for granted that I don't play in time a lot of the time, but I think, you know, oftentimes the way our psychologies are kind of illustrated now in terms of like a canvas or a workflow is if you look at a computer and you're running a DAW audio software, you see grids constantly. There were, I think, only 2 songs out of the 11 on this album that I recorded to a grid. Everything else is totally whimsical in terms of time, which I really enjoy. It's funny, I've always kind of felt comfortable going off the grid, especially with recording. And the thing that really taught me how to do it well was back in 2016 when I released my debut album, In My Room. The way that I funded that album and I built the campaign was through a service called Patreon. It's like one of the crowdfunding websites that I'm sure you know. And I decided to launch a campaign where I would harmonize my fans, harmonize my audience members. So I asked people to send me 15-second snippets of any melody in any language of their choosing. Some of them wrote new melodies, some of them sang songs I knew. And I would kind of send it back to them harmonized, and I would film myself singing the parts, and I would upload them as videos. And I did about 100 in the end, and it was a really fun way of building an audience online in those early days. And to me, it was like I had to get really good at harmonizing quickly because I'd received so many different submissions. And that process, it was like solving Sudokus, you know? It's like someone would send a melody that sort of goes, you know, whatever the melody was. And I would find a solution for it harmonically that felt just like ticklish and fun and made the person sound really good. But no one was singing on grid. So I had to create ways of making somebody's time make sense without imposing anything on them. You know, I had melodies from like 2-year-old kids, you know, super microtonal, as I'm sure was not their intention. But there's this one girl, so she sang like, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," you know, and my job is not to change anything about the melody all the time. But so I modulated around her kind of using all these microtonal chords to make her sound incredible, you know, and it was a really fun, like, philosophical musical exercise for me. But I think that one of the biggest things it taught me, especially with, you know, accompanying musicians who would play things in time, was how you can kind of make someone sound good by following their time rather than imposing any kind of grid. It wouldn't have worked if I tried to impose a grid. So weirdly, I learned a lot of lessons from that process that I applied to this album, because I think with this album, I was kind of harmonizing myself in the sense that I'd record a full-length take, a recording, and then I would begin the process of, in so much as it was necessary, adding that context or decoration or, you know, just sort of like, elements to make that performance shine. Mm-hmm. And for certain songs, like there's one song called Icarus, which is by a group called The Staves, which I just love so much, the song. That is primarily just completely me doing it live. Same with the song called Norwegian Wood, which I recorded. It's fundamentally just that live performance of me playing the song. And then other songs like the Beach Boys' Keep an Eye on Summer, some of my own songs like Heaven, Butterflies, and I Know a Little. Some of these things have a little bit more of that layering effect involved. But I love the challenge of following something that feels natural and organic and alive without trying to, in music we say the word quantize it, sort of lock it to a grid, make it rigid in terms of rhythm, but also in terms of tuning, in terms of sound. I love all that scriggly imperfection.
Mm-hmm. Norwegian wood is interesting because, of course, there's always a debate about whether Norwegian wood's in 3/4 time or 6/8.
Yeah.
And you do something. First of all, you're making a sound that sounds like you're striking above the nut. Is that true?
Yeah, this thing.
Is that what you did?
I did do that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like, so I lit a fire. Isn't it good? There's one thing, but that figure.
But the rhythm you picked for that.
Yeah. Again, it's that drone thing. Mm-hmm. And I love the palm muting sound in general. But what you're hearing a lot is me hammering on with my left hand and these little baby kind of like strings. Mm-hmm. And I love it because it feels, again, it doesn't feel like a guitar. It doesn't feel like I'm, hey, I'm not, it's like, it's like partly percussion, partly drum, partly kind of drone, and there's something almost like a kalimba about it, like thumb piano-y about it. It's really kind of groovy.
It sounds a little, and I know it's not. It sounds a little bossa nova almost.
The
first part,
somewhat. Yeah.
But then the chorus, you do play like you're just playing.
That's more open. Yeah. But I love how, one of the things about this guitar I love is that it has a 6-string neck, but only 5 strings. So there's much more space between the strings to just kind of find these sounds. And somehow it's like an appealing system for me to find these kind of ticklish little pockets. And in this song I also do a lot of string bending, which again is possible because of the space between the strings. But for this particular song, the time is constantly shifting slightly because it's all live, but I focused on the fact that this was just me doing a take and singing the song, and only at the very last minute did I add a couple of little moments of decoration here and there.
Mm-hmm. Now, probably the most produced song is your Beach Boy cover of Keep an Eye on Summer.
Yeah.
Not their best known song, but tremendous song.
I love that song.
What inspired you to do that song?
This was one of the things that I had before the 4-day window began. I'd recorded a rendition of this song summer of 2024. Actually, it was on Midsummer's Day. And it was one of those rare days that I'm sure many of you will know, where your life's been full and you've been busy and things have been going on, but you just find yourself at the weekend home. You've got a whole afternoon ahead of you. You think, what shall I do? I find myself, alone to myself. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just record Keep an Eye on Summer, because it was a song I'd been sort of jamming on for a bit and playing. And I just got my 10-string guitar, which was a brand new kind of angle on the 5-string. It's just the sort of 12-string equivalent of the 5-string. And so I sat down, and I took me about 3 or 4 hours, and I recorded this quite scrappy arrangement of it with all these different layers and things. And that arrangement of the song existing actually was quite a big part of the inspiration to make this album at all, because when I sat down in May to do this record, I thought, well, what do I have that I could work with? And it's like, well, I have that arrangement of Keep an Eye on Summer. Maybe I could build a whole record around that world, because it's a musical world I really love, and a sort of sonority, a particular area of my taste that I've really wanted to explore and go deep into for ages.
And sorry, what is that area that you loved?
I think it's a combination of the sound of the guitar mixed with a sort of stripped back approach. There's also, with Keep an Eye on Summer, a microphone that I use called an R88 ribbon mic, which has that really nice hiss, like to everything. So when you record something on it, it feels really, kind of feels analog, feels alive, feels like warm and rich. So there's something about that which is a big part of this world, which for me made a big impact. And I used it on Keep an Eye on Summer. It's one of the first times I'd ever recorded using it, and so I got really excited by this hissy, warm world. I'd explored it a little bit with Djesse Volume 2 back in the day. But yeah, there's something about the acoustic guitar meets vocal harmony world that inspired me, and obviously the king of vocal harmony and songwriting to me is Brian, has always been Brian. So to cover that song, Keep An Eye on Summer, felt like a really nice sort of homage to the great man. And we obviously lost Brian this year, so it just felt like a really nice thing to share that arrangement with the world as just a sort of really warm, sunlit, gladeful afternoon in England, thinking, oh, maybe I can do a rendition of the song that I really love. And yes, not one of his big hits, but a beautiful modulation in that bridge there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It goes up I can't remember the chords exactly.
It might be a major third or something, or minor third.
Now, did you get a chance to meet him?
Sorry. I never did get a chance to meet Brian. And he, like Joni, was one of these people who sits on a throne in my head. And someone who, like, I never felt the need to meet him for any. I have enough of a feast of inspiration just from his work. But I did see him play once, and it was unbelievable.
It's funny when you talk about this album. It was about restricting choices, or at least putting some of your palette away. Which is, famously, he's the guy that was almost driven crazy by the number of choices he could make in a studio.
Yes, exactly. I mean, here's a guy who embraced the fireman's bells and the timpani and the swanny whistle and
the theremin
and the theremin, of course. And it's to me, it gave me so much permission as a kid to play and to explore these big worlds. But I also love that, I think it's a bootleg album that Brian was put out of just Brian playing songs on the piano. It might be called like Brian at the Piano or something like that. And he just plays these songs at the piano, and you recognize with Brian how strong the songs are. Because when you take away all the swanny whistles and the craziness of the sound, which I love so much, you're left with a really beautiful song. And so, for me, that was so inspiring, and still so inspiring to me as a songwriter. It's like, how can you make something that both works in a totally acoustic stripped back scenario and also works when you scale all those layers on top of other layers? And you have a song like Good Vibrations, which I think I look back at that at the first time I heard that song, and it was just like this whole new faction of creativity became available to me. It's like I just didn't know you could do that. But when Brian sits at the piano and plays the song, it sounds great too, and that's what I love about Brian and love about those songs.
I want to talk about a couple more of your influences, how they may or may not have found their way into this album.
Yeah.
You grew up in a musical family, and you said you sang Bach chorales.
I did.
At home. What part did you sing, by the way?
Well, I was the bass. So I would, and I'd often add notes in or improvise things around those things. I always have a pencil handy and would be jotting notes in and things, just learning what I liked and what I and what I responded to. But so I was brought up by a single mum. I'm the eldest of 3 kids, so we were SATB, and my mum sings tenor kind of. She kind of goes and it kind of comes out with these tenor lines. But I really loved that feeling. I still love that feeling now of sitting with those lovely people and just singing together. And actually, it's what Brian used to do too. He used to sing with his brothers. He used to transcribe 4 freshman arrangements, and they'd sing it all together as a group. And I think he did a lot of his process of studying and expanding his kind of harmonic palette through learning these arrangements and teaching the parts to his brothers. And I love the thought that, he did that and then went on to write songs like, Surfer Girl or whatever, and out come all these 4 freshman voicings. But in the context of a surf rock song, it's amazing.
Now, are there points where we're hearing a little Bach in any of the songs on this album?
It's a good question. I find him unavoidably inspiring, and he shows up in all sorts of places. I think there are certain moments. There's a song called "Where Did My Apple Fall" on the album, which is it's quite an austere tune. It's quite a strange song. I really love it a lot. One of those sort of song seeds that I had that I didn't know what to do with it, because it didn't feel like it fit on any of the Djesse albums, and it didn't really have a world where it belonged. And I was so excited to get to release it. But it's almost quite classical in terms of the harmony. It's sort of this 3-part harmony that moves, I think, in a way that hopefully Bach may approve of. There's another song on the album called Tom Thumb, which is a similar thing. So it goes, Tom Thumb goes. Light up the stove of your countenance. You're all that matters to me. I am a lake or a stone or an hourglass. I am a joke that is wasted on me. Wrap me in scarves of your confidence. Rend me to tatters, I'm free. I'll be a steak or a bone or an oven glove. I'll be the island that drowns in the sea. Tom, Thumb, where did it come from? I'm lost, soft, drowning in everything. Tom, Thumb, thought you were gone, then I found you inside of everything. Ooh. That's the whole song.
It's lovely.
It's very short. But this, what is it? It's very classical.
Mm-hmm. The moving line.
And I love that influence showing up in songs. You can't plan what inspires you. And when you sit down to write a song, your job is to make space for whatever wants to sort of come through. But I think having loved that music for so long as a kid, it's always a surprise and delight, but also unsurprising to me to see certain sort of triadic things make their way into songs. And I think, a progression like that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that influence. So I definitely didn't learn the bulk of my harmonic understanding or my songwriter style through any kind of jazz harmony. I think I was most inspired and informed by some of the more expensive classical harmony that I loved as a child, and hearing that find its way into songs, to me that's always a sign that I'm tapped into something real.
Mm-hmm. Here's a trickier one: Benjamin Britten, whom you love.
I adore.
Any little bits of Benjamin Britten in here?
I would definitely say so. I think those two songs feel Britten-esque to the point that they are austere. I think of Britten as the master of the austere harmonically. Like he kind of plays what's not the chord rather than just what is the chord. He'll leave out a really important note in a chord and make you feel like you have to imagine the note instead. You know.
Well, he often inverted chords in the bass.
He did.
You'd have a fifth in the bass.
You'd have a fifth or a third or even a seventh or a sixth. It really had a very bold imagination for kind of leaving space in chords and leaving austerity within chords. I think Britten, to me, it's hard to point to a particular moment where it's like, oh, there's Britten, but I think that the attitude of a harmonic language that can be, both very warm and reassuring and also austere and rather unpredictable. I think that there's an essence of that, which he was like one of the founding fathers for me as a child, of being harmonically unpredictable in ways that are just disarming. Like not just fully fledged and sort of radically dense, but just surprising in these gaunt ways.
Yeah, I was watching a video you made, I'm not sure how many years ago. You were on Logic, just showing people how you create vocal effects over, I think you used maybe Hey Jude. I'm not I can't remember. It's Hey Jude or something like that. And you were just showing people, and you were talking about doing this, and this is how you created. I think this is where I got your description of decoration over top of the melody, and how impatient you are to get to to that part. I'm glad you've learned patience. But you said something that really struck me. You said, and you were speaking very fast, and you said, this takes a lot of practice, and then you paused and you said, and it takes a lot of courage and trust. Mm-hmm. And those two last words really interested me because not only, I mean, I've dealt with writers my whole life. I'm an editor. That's something so many people lack, courage and trust. And even musicians we have in here sometimes who have great accomplishments and are sitting here at some point in their career don't have that faith in their own work at that moment.
Yeah.
I'm interested where you get that.
Oh, it's a beautiful question. I think of all the most important things in music. I don't think they are musical things. I think they're human things. I think courage and trust are two of the central pillars that are somewhat necessary to make a thing at all and make something interesting. To me, it's hard to say where these things come from. I think everyone needs a champion in different ways, in different parts of their journey. Everyone needs a person to reflect them back at themselves in a certain way, in some form, and say, hey, this thing that you are doing is interesting. To me, I can think of people along my journey, whether it's my mother or whether it's Quincy Jones or Herbie Hancock or just peers of mine, friends of mine who notice something about what I'm doing in a moment where I don't have that trust and belief and say, you realize this is special, you should keep doing that. And I say, oh, really? Are you sure? And they say, yeah. And there's something about that exchange, that reflection, which I think it really helped me along my way. I don't know where my audacity comes from quite. It probably comes partly from my mom. It comes partly from my heroes, people I've loved over the years. I think I've always possessed a sort of dogged belief that something is possible, even if it's totally not possible. You know, for example, going to a key that doesn't exist. You know, these kinds of things that I've done in the past. You know, the piano is limited to 12 notes. I've written songs in keys that are beyond those 12 notes, and the only real reason I've done it is because I'm just too interested not to give it a try. I think that every time you take a risk and something interesting happens, you get a little bit of confidence out of that. I think about being on stage over the years, and you know, when I first stepped onto a stage, it's a really scary thing to do. You know, you stand in front of 1,000 people or 5,000 people or 100 people, whatever it is, and you tell your story, and everyone's watching. And if you're not used to that as a format, it's a really strange thing to do. It's a strange thing to subject yourself to. But what I found is every time I'd take a risk and I'd get a little bit of that reward back, I'd gain a little bit more courage for next time. And I think that as one thing went to another, both in the studio and out of the studio, I really enjoyed you just have to try stuff out. And you know, the worst thing that can happen in music is that you do something that's just not great. And we've all made things that aren't great, you know. And I think when I'm at my best, when I'm at my most open and free flowing, I'm totally willing to just let go and see what comes out. And I also know the feeling of I think as all artists do, of really doubting the thing I'm making. You know, basically every single thing I make at a certain point, I'll be like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know. Is this really worth completing? It doesn't feel like it tells the whole story, or it feels like it tells too much of the story, or you know, is this interesting enough? I think is something I've often come up against myself, or is this too much? You know, have I gone too far? There aren't really any guidelines around this stuff. Like, there are people whose taste we can align with, but ultimately as an artist, you have to find those lines for yourself. I think I have deliberately put myself in situations creatively where I'll be uncomfortable and I won't know what's going to happen next, and I have to find a solution. I think about collaborations like that too. I've been in the room with musicians who I respect greatly and who I've been trying to build some kind of musical bridge with, and you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But there's always an interesting lesson to learn. I think that trust comes from not being afraid to make a mistake. I think that there's nothing that prevents creativity more effectively than the fear of making a mistake. That's the ultimate death nail for you being open and you being, you know, and I experience this all the time. And I think my job as an artist is to keep on maintaining those strategies that flip you out of those kind of fear directions and think, well, you know, I can take confidence in my risk going through this challenge. And at this point, I've done so many kind of unruly things musically that I do have a sense of faith in myself.
People don't talk a lot about your lyrics, mainly because I think you're known so much for your incredible music vocabulary. Has your lyric writing changed?
Yes, it has. I think, in a sense, I still feel like I'm learning the ropes. I'm someone who loves words and description and language equally as much as I love music. I could happily talk about my experience of the world in as much length as I play about my experience of the world. The two worlds have existed somewhat separately for me for a lot of my life. Because the music that I've created in the past contains so much kind of depth and contour and color, my sense over the years has often been to not try to make the lyrics too much either, because otherwise it's just too much information. So sometimes my lyrics have been relatively simple in comparison to the music, but as someone who just loves the whole spirit of language within poetry and words and resonance and the mind. It's something that I think with this album, I think there's a particular element of that being explored anew. But I'm always curious how those two worlds can converge, and I'm always blown away when a songwriter can do both things really well.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
And it's the last song on your album,
Mm-hmm.
which is very different. And after a beautiful album, it comes as such a surprise.
Yeah.
The lyrics are quite different. The piano treatment is quite simple.
Mm-hmm.
And you use your voice in a way that I had never really heard before.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a bit about that song?
I can. So the song's called Something Heavy, and it's another one of these songs that I had before the album. I didn't know what to do with that song. It felt like it came from a totally different place from other songs, but I loved that figure. I can play it for you on the piano right now. It's just something I found myself one day really enjoying. That as a space. I thought, okay, there's a song that needs to be written here in some way, you know? And so I started to sing a melody, and as I went, some things came out. So I sang, I've been holding something kind of heavy. And then I had this, and I really like that melody. And so I worked it through, and I figured that it might be fun to just say, so let go now. Let it go now. And the idea of holding something heavy. So let it go now. It's like a song from an ancestor or something. And we all know the feeling of holding something for a really, really long time, and finally realizing I gotta put this down. I gotta let this go. This isn't serving me anymore. This is something big, and I don't need it. And there's a sense of relief about that exchange, that handoff, and there's a sense of grief about that handoff as well. I think that, it's one of those songs that just kind of came, it wrote itself a little bit. It's like the figure was there, and I became kind of really attached to it, and the melody was clear. The chorus. It's time to let it go. I knew that's how it should end. And so I sang it until the lyrics came through. And every time I feel a weight upon me, you hold a line to keep it all inside. And all my life you've been holding on beside me. And I know it's time to let it go now. Let it go now. So the song kind of came from there. One thing I found on tour that I really love to do is belt, like use my chest voice and belt really loud. And this album is such a softly spoken album, and I enjoyed the idea that just at the very last minute I would really sing out. And so the second chorus of the song goes, and every time I build a wall around me, but I belt it loud. I'm like, and every time I build a wall around me, you hold a line to pull me back to life. And all this time you never stop thinking of me, but I know it's time to let it go now. And that kind of catharsis was something I think the album needed. It's funny. It's all this kind of softness and consideration and warmth, and it needed a burst. It needed a burst open. But I didn't write this song for this album. I wrote this song in its own right, and realized, oh, actually this could totally work for this record. And yeah, the style of songwriting, the style of lyric writing, came from a kind of a different place. But it was a refreshing challenge to write from that perspective, just write from a figure or an instrument. I think the way it was related to the rest of the album is that it came from my relationship with one figure or one instrument, and that kind of solo instrument approach was different from other songs I've written that begin as kind of sonic worlds, sonic environments or moods, and then that is what bursts the lyrics. But yeah, this just felt like a good old-fashioned song, you know.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Yes,
just wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
All right, it was great.
Thanks for checking out Broken Record on YouTube. If you want to listen to us on the go, be sure to subscribe to Broken Record wherever you listen to podcasts.